Hi, it's Frank. This test is required for all individuals seeking a commercial driver's license in Washington state. It covers the core knowledge necessary for safely operating any commercial motor vehicle, including federal and state rules on safety, vehicle inspection, air brakes, and cargo securement. Let's get started. What is the minimum tread depth for front tires on a commercial motor vehicle, CMV? 430 inch. Federal regulations mandate a minimum tread depth of a 430 inch for the steering axle tires. Let's continue. For all other tires besides the front, what is the minimum tread depth? 232 inch. All non-steering axle tires, drive and trailer axles must have a minimum of 230 inch tread depth. Moving on. Why is it important to shift gears properly in a CMV? To maintain speed and avoid transmission damage. Proper shifting keeps the engine in its optimal RPM range, which saves fuel, controls speed, and protects the transmission. Time for the next question. To avoid wheel lockup when braking on a slippery road, you'd use light and steady pressure on the brakes. Avoid sudden or hard braking, which can easily lock the wheels and cause a skid on low traction surfaces. Next up, what is the first thing you should do if you experience a tire blowout? Hold the steering wheel firmly and stay off the brake. Maintain a firm grip to counteract the pull, let the vehicle slow down, and then brake very gently once the speed is reduced. Let's continue. Why must you check for rust streaks or shiny threads around the lug nuts on your wheels? It is a sign that the nuts are loose. Rust or shiny metal shows that the components are moving, which indicates a loose wheel assembly that could fail. Moving on. If you're driving a 40-foot vehicle at 40 miles per hour, what is the minimum following distance in seconds? 4 seconds. The safe following distance rule for CMVs is 1 second per 10 feet of vehicle length. Time for the next question. When should you turn off your retarder? When the road is slippery, wet, icy, or snow-covered. Retarders only slow the drive wheels and can cause them to skid on low-traction surfaces. Next up, what is the primary purpose of clearance lights on a commercial vehicle? To show the vehicle's width and height to other drivers. These lights are required to indicate the extreme width and height of large vehicles, aiding safety and visibility. Let's continue. What is a no zone for a commercial vehicle? The large blind spots around the front, sides, and rear of the vehicle. No zones are areas where a CMV driver cannot see other vehicles, increasing the risk of a crash. Moving on. When driving a CMV, what is the best way to determine your safe speed on a curved road? Read the advisory speed sign posted for the curve. These signs provide the recommended maximum speed for safe negotiation of the curve. Time for the next question. What should you do if you are being tailgated? Increase your following distance. This provides the tailgater more space to stop safely if you have to slow down suddenly. Next up, what is controlled braking? With an anti-lock braking system, ABS, applying firm, steady pressure without locking the wheels. With ABS, you press the pedal hard and keep your foot on it, allowing the system to modulate pressure automatically. Let's continue. What is the minimum number of tie-downs required for any piece of cargo, regardless of length? 2. Cargo securement rules require a minimum of 2 tie-downs for every piece of cargo to prevent movement. Moving on. What are the 2 main reasons for vehicle fires? Improper fueling and short circuits/loose connections. Electrical faults and static discharge spillage during refueling are common causes of CMV fires. Time for the next question. If your vehicle catches fire, what should you do if you do not have a fire extinguisher? Get away from the vehicle and call for help. If you cannot safely fight the fire, distance yourself and contact emergency services immediately. Next up. How far ahead should you check your vehicle condition and mirrors? 12 to 15 seconds ahead. This provides enough time to identify hazards and make necessary speed or position adjustments. Let's continue. What is the maximum allowable free play in a power steering system for a 20-inch steering wheel? About 2 inches, 10 degrees. More than 10 degrees of movement indicates a defect that needs immediate repair. Moving on. To prevent the transmission from popping out of gear, you should check that the gear is fully engaged. A common cause of a transmission popping out of gear is the driver failing to push the gear lever all the way into the gear slot. Time for the next question. What is the first step in the 7-step inspection method? Vehicle overview. This initial step involves a quick look at the vehicle and paperwork to detect obvious safety issues before the detailed inspection. Next up, how long does it take for a heavily loaded CMV to stop in good conditions? More than a football field's length, about 300 feet. A loaded CMV requires a significantly greater stopping distance than a car due to its weight. Let's continue. What is the most critical time to check your mirrors when driving a CMV? When changing lanes, turning, and checking your vehicle's position. These checks are vital for safe maneuvers and maintaining your space cushion. Moving on. How much water pressure per square inch can cause a hydroplane? About 1/8 inch of water. Even a thin layer of water can lift the tires off the road surface, causing hydroplaning and a loss of steering. Time for the next question. When must you check your air tanks and drain them? At the end of each working day. Draining the air tanks is necessary to remove moisture and oil, which can freeze or damage the air brake system components. Next up, what is the definition of black ice? A thin layer of ice that is clear enough to see the road underneath. Black ice is extremely slick and hazardous because it is nearly invisible to the driver. Let's continue. Why is it dangerous to drive when you are fatigued? It dulls your senses and slows your reaction time. Fatigue impairs judgment, concentration, and physical ability, greatly increasing the risk of a crash. Moving on. When driving in mountain areas, what is the primary danger when driving downhill? Brake fade. Excessive use of the surface brakes on a long descent causes overheating, leading to a reduction or total loss of braking power. Time for the next question. If you are convicted of a second offense for driving a CMV under the influence of alcohol or drugs, what is the penalty? You will lose your CDL for life. Federal law mandates permanent CDL disqualification for a second conviction of driving a CMV under the influence. Next up, what should you do immediately if you discover hazardous material is leaking from your vehicle? Safely park the vehicle and isolate the area. Your first steps are to safely get off the road and contain the spill to protect the public and the environment. Let's continue. What is the maximum acceptable air pressure drop in 1 minute with the engine off and the brakes applied for a single vehicle? 3 psi. A drop exceeding 3 psi indicates a serious air leak. Moving on. How can you check if your engine oil pressure is low? Look at the oil pressure gauge. It should be rising or steady. Low pressure is indicated if the gauge drops or if the warning light comes on, signaling an emergency. Time for the next question. How does vehicle height impact safety? A high center of gravity increases the risk of rollover. Taller vehicles are less stable, especially in turns or crosswinds, making speed control critical. Next up, what is the proper way to use the service brakes on a long, steep downgrade? Use the low gear and brake lightly and intermittently. Apply the brakes for a short period to slow down, then release them to allow them to cool. Repeat as needed to control speed. Let's continue. What should you use to warn other drivers if your CMV breaks down on the side of the road? Reflective triangles, flares, or temporary warning signs. These devices must be set out at specific distances to warn approaching traffic of the stationary hazard. Moving on. In Washington, what is the maximum driving time allowed after 10 consecutive hours off duty? Intrastate. 11 hours. Washington's intrastate rule permits 11 hours of driving after 10 consecutive hours off duty. Time for the next question. What must you do if you cannot see the vehicles behind you while backing? Use a helper. A spotter is essential to guide you and watch your blind spots when rear visibility is obstructed. Next up, what is the correct way to stop a CMV with a manual transmission? Push in the clutch when the engine speed is close to idle. The clutch should be pressed just before the stop to prevent the engine from stalling. Let's continue. When making a wide right turn, how should you negotiate the intersection? Swing wide to the left only if necessary, ensuring no cars are squeezed. You should avoid swinging left if possible, but if necessary, check your mirrors to ensure you don't trap a vehicle between your truck and the curb. Moving on. What can happen if you drive too quickly over a bumpy road or railroad tracks? You could lose control or damage the suspension. High speed over uneven surfaces can lead to a sudden loss of traction or severe damage to tires and suspension components. Time for the next question. What is the greatest danger in wet brakes? They are weaker and harder to stop. Water reduces the friction necessary for braking, making the brakes less effective and increasing stopping distance. Next up, what is the most important reason for a pre-trip inspection? Safety is the number one reason. Inspections are legally required and critical to ensure the vehicle is safe to operate, preventing crashes and mechanical failures. Let's continue. What is the main cause of skids? Over-acceleration, over-braking, or oversteering. Skids happen when the tires lose traction due to applying too much power, braking too hard, or turning too sharply for the conditions. Moving on. If you are forced to drive into a lane of oncoming traffic to avoid a crash, you should try to drive onto the shoulder to the right of the oncoming vehicle. In an extreme emergency, driving off the road is often safer than a head-on collision. Time for the next question. What does the acronym ABS stand for? Anti-lock braking system. ABS is a computerized system that prevents wheel lockup during hard braking. Next up, what is the best way to handle an aggressive driver on the road? Get out of their way safely and avoid eye contact. Do not engage with the aggressive driver. Simply create distance and let them pass to reduce the risk of confrontation. Let's continue. What is the most effective way to communicate your intention to change lanes? Use your turn signal well in advance. Early signaling allows other drivers time to react and adjust their speed and position. Moving on. What must you do to ensure the cargo is safe after 50 miles of driving? Inspect the cargo and its securement again. Cargo tends to settle during the first part of a trip, often loosening the tie downs, which requires a mandatory check within 50 miles. Time for the next question. How do you test the hydraulic brakes for a leak? Pump the pedal 3 times, then hold it down for 5 seconds. The pedal should not move. If the pedal moves down slowly during the 5 seconds, there is a leak in the hydraulic system. Next up, what is the danger of letting the brake pressure drop too low in an air brake system? The spring brakes will activate automatically. If the air pressure drops too low, typically 20 to 45 psi, the emergency/parking brakes will engage suddenly, bringing the vehicle to an abrupt, uncontrolled stop. Let's continue. What is the most important factor in determining how fast you can safely drive on a downgrade? The road grade and length of the grade. The steepness and duration of the hill determine how much engine braking is needed to prevent brake fade. That wraps up our practice session for the Washington CDL General Knowledge exam. Keep reviewing this material, and you'll be ready for your test.